Convene this meeting of the New York State DNA Subcommittee. And typically what I do at this stage is welcome all the members of the DNA Subcommittee, which I'm doing right now. But I do want to announce that there have been some changes to the committee. Unfortunately, we heard about the death of our good friend George Carmody, who was a member of the subcommittee for 9 years, from 2002 to 2011. His untimely death on June 13th has meant, obviously, we have to replace George, but I should like to thank George for his work in this area. So, George Carmody was the representative on the committee. He was from the area of population genetics. The committee is, of course, comprised of individuals, some of whom are recommended by the Department of Health Commissioner, and some of whom are recommended by the Commissioner of DCGS. And Dr. Carmody was the representative of the discipline of population genetics, recommended by the Department of Health. So as a replacement for Dr. George Carmody, we're lucky to have with us Dr. Kenneth Kidd from Yale University, and we're very pleased to have Dr. Kidd here with us today. He's a very well-respected geneticist, and Dr. Kidd is is a professor of genetics, ecology and evolutionary biology and psychiatry at the Yale Cancer Center. I didn't know about the psychiatry bit, so be careful, folks. Ken, you can say a few words if you want to introduce yourself. If not, we can proceed.
Well, thank you. What I will say is that I don't consider myself capable of replacing George Carmody, but I do have some experience in the area of human population genetics, and I'm happy to be on the committee.
Thank you very much. So that's one new member of the committee. We have another new member of the committee, and previously we had again a representative recommended by the Department of Health, a representative of the discipline of laboratory standards and quality assurance and regulation, and that was Dr. Anne Walsh. And Dr. Anne Walsh served from 2001 to 2011, 10 years. And we should also like to thank Dr. Walsh, who's resigned from the committee prior to this meeting. We should like to thank Dr. Walsh for her contributions to this committee and the people of New York. Thank you. So I'm also very delighted then to introduce Dr. Anne Walsh's replacement, and we're delighted to have Dr. Alison Eastman here. Dr. Eastman, who I've known personally for many years, is a very well-respected member of the forensic community who happens to also have a large interest in the area of quality assurance. And Dr. Eastman is a forensic consultant in biology, DNA, and crime laboratory quality assurance. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. The record should reflect that we now have a quorum. In fact, we have all members of the committee present, which must be a first. All members of the committee are present, so we have a quorum for voting purposes. So, without further ado, then, the first item on the agenda, I should also like to welcome members of the public who are here as well. But I should like to then move on to the first item on the agenda, which is to review and approve the meeting agenda itself. So the committee members have a copy of this agenda in front of them, and our first job is to review and approve or otherwise this agenda.
Please state your name.
I make the motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favour of proceeding as is, say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Let's proceed then with the agenda. So the next item number 3, is to review and approve the draft minutes from the previous meeting, May 20th, 2011. Again, we were provided with a draft meeting minutes document, and we have it in front of us. So if the committee needs some time to further review this, if not,
I move to have these approved. Of course, they were, a new version were sent to us recently. So I'd like to move that the new version be accepted and not what was originally sent.
Yes. Does everyone have the so-called new version that was sent? Okay. Motion? There's a motion in front. Anyone second the motion?
I second
One
it.
second. Any discussion? If not, then we accept. All those in favour of the motion, to accept it?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously accepted. So the minutes have been approved. Thank you. Okay. So the next item on the agenda, item 4, is dealing with accreditation and laboratory updates. And the first laboratory that we are concerned with, or we're going to discuss, is the Suffolk County Crime Laboratory. And I see we have Joe Goldie here from the Suffolk County Crime Lab. Joe, do you want to give us just a brief summary of what the issues were that you had?
Okay.
Brief summary.
Really, most of the findings were small paperwork issues. There was, we used an outside contractor lab for backlog DNA casework, and we were asked to provide their most recent quality assurance audit. And this was done at the very last minute of the inspection. I couldn't locate it at that time. It was located in a different file than where I expected it. So we were able to produce that file and send it in. There was an issue with our fire extinguishers, hadn't been checked. You know, it was issues along those lines.
Was that
Nothing
the
really.
safety issue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there was fire extinguishers that hadn't been checked for 2 years in an isolated room, so we got that taken care of. There was paperwork for a contract employee that we didn't have together at the time of the inspection. We were able to put that together shortly after. So all of the issues that we had, both DNA and otherwise in the crime lab, had been resolved to the satisfaction of NDIS and also ASCLAD lab.
I suppose, Joe, the one question I have is, there was one question regarding CODIS entries, right? There was some question of where they not being checked, double-checked, for transpositional errors. Is that correct? At
Yes.
the time of entry?
Yes, that's correct. And we have since resolved it. We have another analyst who double-checks the entry prior to it being uploaded, and we document that on the paperwork.
Was there any evidence whatsoever that there had been any errors prior to that, or
None that
due
we
to that,
found.
not checking the...
No, none that
Yeah,
we found.
Okay. Any other members of the committee? Questions, comments?
Joe, there was some findings on training, 5.1, and then you made, I guess, a training checklist.
That's correct.
If I may, I just want to ask a question about the training checklist. There was task 12. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
There's, it says body fluid identification, DNA extraction. Are those the minimum samples that are required for each of those types of analyses? So if you were trying to become expert in body fluid identification, you would do those samples to get qualified, I guess.
Not totally. What Task 12 is specifically if there's a new technology brought into the lab. So you have an analyst that is already qualified in either body fluid identification or DNA analysis, and we add a new technology. For example, when we went from QuantHuman to QuantDuo, something along those lines. We did not have a minimum number of samples that an analyst had to try out or work on prior to doing the competency test. The only documentation that we had at the time was the competency test itself. So they said if you have an analyst who's already online and competent in your lab and you're showing them a new technology, we had to have minimum standards set for that analyst to test on the new technology prior to doing the competency test.
So, if I may, what sort of, how were these judged? So they were giving you samples, they were, let's say in the quant, so they're given a number of samples and they were told to quantum. Is there some criteria that says, hey, these are done properly or not done properly? It says later that the competency is graded. what sort of criteria are used to say, hey, you did a good job?
Well, it's done at the competency test stage, and typically the competency test will consist of 5 samples. So, for example, let's say we were using a new typing kit, like when we went from Pro and Co to Identifile. Once the analyst has completed all the required testing samples as laid out in Task 12, they would then get 5 samples that have been previously typed by another analyst using Identifiler. They will type those 5 samples, and if they get it correct, then they get a memo saying, you are now cleared to use this on casework.
Yeah. I'm just going to follow up, if you don't mind. Sure. On those areas where it's a little bit more subjective in something like quantitation, if you know the number, if you get somebody and it's supposed to be a half nanogram, what sort of, and he gets something different, is there some sort of criteria that says, hey, you missed it, you got to go back, or is there, I guess I'm looking for the assessment.
Right. With quantifilers, obviously a different animal. They're not going to get the exact same number.
Right.
It's more a matter of getting within a range, and to be honest, I don't have that information right with me.
Okay.
But
that's
clearly,
something
if the
you have.
number is way off, then that would not be a pass, whereas if they were within the acceptable range, it would be for each of the samples.
So you somewhere else you've got some acceptable ranges that.
Any other comments or questions? So, Joe, in summary then, basically you had an audit in 2010, and then you had the corrective action, so to speak, sent in December of 2010, and now you've got the letter from the custodian saying you're in compliance.
That's true.
Right.
And this was also as part of an ASCLD lab inspection, so we have gotten the okay from the ASCLD lab board as well.
Yes. And this was your mid-cycle inspection report, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, from the committee standpoint, we're required to consider, take a vote here on whether to grant or to give a binding recommendation to Commission to grant Suffolk County accreditation. So this is one of the, today we have this one vote we have to take.
So moved.
And I second it.
And the approval will run concurrent with the ASCLD lab cycle, which will run through December 5th, 2012, with that modification.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Do you want me to read the motion formally, or we're all in agreement that I can read the motion since I have it here. At September 23rd, 2011, New York State DNA Subcommittee meeting, the DNA Subcommittee voted to make a binding recommendation to grant the Suffolk County Crime Laboratory New York State accreditation for the discipline of biology, based upon a review of the ASCLD lab and quality assurance audit for forensic DNA laboratories conducted during the period October 26th to 29th, 2010. This approval will run concurrent with the ASCLD lab cycle, which will run through December 5th, 2012. The motion in detail. All those in favour of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Tim, do you want to get Jen's image?
So the next item on the agenda is Erie County Central Police Services Forensic Laboratory. The committee has a copy of the DNA Quality Assurance Audit dated the June 7th to the 9th of this year, and a response to that DNA Advisory Board audit by John Simich, July 20th, 2011, and we're hoping that John Simich, the director of the lab, will be available to us via conference call. So there's no vote on this.
No.
Hi, John, this is Kimberly Chabon. We're calling you on speaker from the DNA Subcommittee meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that John?
John Simich.
Hello, John. John, this is Jack Ballantyne here.
Hey, Jack.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. So we have our full DNA subcommittee here, John, and we're on the agenda item that is discussing the audit, your audit.
Right.
And so it may be useful to the committee. We have some new members also of the committee. Could you just give us a brief synopsis of what the findings of the audit were and what you're doing about them, if any?
Okay. Well, what they found was we have a policy here where we do quality checks of all profiles that are generated, just to ensure that see if there's any in-house contamination from it. We have all of our staff on file in CODIS Local. And during that, when they were reviewing it, they saw that we were doing it, but then they noticed in our manual we did not have it written down as an actual policy and the procedures that we do and guidelines. So that was the essential of their findings.
And so basically you're doing this and all you've done is just write up the fact that you're doing this?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. And that's basically the sum and substance of the issue that pertains to the biology. Okay.
Yeah.
So, does the committee any comments or questions from the committee, either to John directly or in terms of discussion?
Can I ask John?
Yes.
Yeah. John, Eric Buell, how are you doing this morning?
Good.
John, on your letter to Mr. Stacy, Bob Stacy,
Yes.
Part 4, could you just tell us a little bit about the electronic examination documentation and how that is now being tracked when changes are being made?
I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me. I don't know why. My letter to Bob Stacy. Can you read that to me?
Yeah, sure. It's
Is that part of the audit document? Because I don't recall that.
there's one of the findings that you addressed to Bob was Part 4. It's 1.4.2.17, essential. And I'll read it to you if you like.
Yes.
The protocol for the recording of electronic examination documentation has been modified to require tracking of any changes to electronic examination documents. A copy of the manual is included for review. The new wording is highlighted in yellow. I didn't see that in our packet. And
You know what? That was addressing firearms. They record their notes electronically in our limbs.
Oh, okay.
And that was really their finding for that.
So in DNA, you do it paper-based still?
Exactly. We're all paper-based, and we have some forms that are completed, but it's printed out and it goes into the folder. And if any changes have to be made, it's made directly on that form that's in the folder. We don't store it as an electronic copy.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? I think then. So thank you, John.
Thank you.
So I think then, basically, the DNA subcommittee has reviewed Mr. Simich's, Dr. Simich's response, and finds it to be adequate and reasonable and adequate. Is that?
Yeah.
There's no need to vote, but would that be a fair summary of?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. The next
Thanks,
item on
John.
the agenda is New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. And this is regarding a corrective action in reporting of some cases from a particular analyst or scientist. And we have representatives from the OCME here today. Would you like to introduce yourself and just give us a synopsis as to what the issue is?
Maggie Price, Director, Forensic Biology.
Eugene Lien, DNA Technical Leader of Department of Forensic Biology. So the synopsis is that during the training of an analyst that we have, We discovered through tech review and through other aspects that there were 2 cases during this supervised training that came up with positive results after retesting when she reported negative results, and these negative results were all reported out to our customers. One case was a negative case that we found bloodstain on it. But because it was an assault case and it didn't have exemplars, our laboratory policy dictated that we do not proceed. But we did contact our customers to see whether or not they could provide us with additional evidence from the case so that we could proceed should we need to. The second was a sexual assault kit that was tested positive for semen via P30 ELISA. It's a very sensitive assay, but so would detect very low levels of semen on it, but the level of semen that was detected was not enough to produce a DNA profile. We only found the victim's DNA on it, and that was it. So because of these 2 issues, we expanded the investigation, so to say, to see exactly how many cases this analyst touched since the beginning. Just to backtrack a little bit, this analyst started in our laboratory in the year 2000. She went through the training program, and she was unable to pass the DNA oral examination. However, she did pass her serology and her evidence exam at that point in time. So despite the fact that she held a title eligible for a DNA analyst, we put her into a position, or her role in the laboratory was to do serology examinations and to examine sexual assault kits. So because of this incident now, we backtracked all the way to 2000, and we reviewed the number of cases that she did and queried to see which cases we would need to go back to re-examine just to confirm the results. And out of 120 cases that we've determined that we do need to re-examine, right now, as of last week, we've re-examined 38 cases, and unfortunately, out of those 38 cases, there were 7 cases that did become positive that was different from her initial reporting. So we're actively going on with this investigation, and we're going to continue testing up until the completion of those 120 cases, and we'll see exactly what comes of it. As you might imagine, with the economy and with the lack of employees, this has put an additional burden on our laboratory. So this is our number 1 priority, and we will proceed as fast as possible to be able to give you a completed result, to be able to tell you what exactly the results are.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry to hear about this. So what were so she's done a lot of cases since 2000. What were the criteria to select these 120 cases? As a technician in our laboratory, she was rotated through, and she was only examining sexual assault kits. So the criteria that we thought about was that when it came to sexual assault kit swabs, it was nice and easy. In other words, she just cut the swab. She didn't have to examine it visually or anything, and then send it off for P30 examination or for KM blood testing, presumptively, and then send it off for DNA testing. The criteria that we looked at was if there was additional evidence within the sexual assault kits, and that would typically be a pair of underwear from the victim. So that we wheedled everything down, and we saw that there were 120 cases that did have the additional evidence that was reported on negative. So we decided to do all those cases rather than cherry picking and doing a random sample. So she did primarily sexual assault kits that may have had underwear or something like that.
She functioned as a technician, and our technicians, they have rotating roles. They perform DNA extraction, the P30 ELISA assay, the quantitation assay, and sexual assault kit examination. Due to the fact that the sexual assault kit is standardized, we made that a technician role rather than a criminalist role. And her mistake is basically we have those false negative cases. She missed stains. She reported alkaline phosphatase results as negative that now afterwards are positive. So our policy is if alkaline phosphatase is only done on stains. It's not, we do not do this on the swabs. On the swabs, she would only have submitted a cutting to P30 ELISA. But on the underwear, or maybe a bra, small items that sometimes are found in the kit, not always, but sometimes, she was supposed to use the Lumelite to find stains, swab visible fluorescent stains, do the AP testing, and then submit to P30 that was positive. So our logic was to just examine all the kits that she touched where the semen result was negative. She, by the way, she is not working for us anymore. We had filed for termination, and she has agreed to resign.
And you found this back through your quality assurance system itself, or through training, you said? How did you, would this be part of your normal, would you have picked this up as a result of your quality assurance system? I know it took a few years, but...
Well, right now we currently have a quality assurance system in place where we do a random reanalysis of negative cases. This was caught during her training where the supervisor was technically reviewing additional evidence and found that something was just inconsistent with the sexual assault kit examination, so that's why we went back there to check on it.
The training, Eugene had mentioned, she had started in the year 2000, and she had failed to complete the training in DNA testing, but she was still at a level where she should have been tasked with DNA testing. So from a human resources perspective, we felt that was not longer tolerable to have a technician paid for a different role. And so we decided, and also she agreed, to give her another chance at the training. At the training to become a full DNA analyst, and that started in December 2009. And during that training, she processed kits again. That is part of the training, and her supervisor found those mistakes. It was triggered by additional evidence in those cases.
So I know you're still the investigation is still undergoing. Would it be true to say that most of the errors then, if not all of them, maybe not all, because I heard you say something else, were errors of omission as opposed to errors of commission, meaning she missed blood or semen?
Yes.
As opposed to getting the wrong result, so to speak,
That's
on a test she performed, other than that AP test.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
she was getting the wrong result on the
AP test.
Even
So
though you
this-
could argue there is a sampling error involved here, where
Yes.
exactly you take your cutting. But she clearly, these were false negative
Yeah.
cases.
Well, false positives, Jack, would have revealed themselves long before that.
Yes.
If she didn't know the difference between ketchup and blood, the next person to examine it would have discovered. So the false positives aren't really a consideration, because she had nothing to do with the specimen after she found the stain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hirsch. Yes, if the technicians process the kits, but as soon as the stain is positive, the whole case gets transferred to a DNA analyst, of course,
Right.
yes. And then the subsequent extraction would have revealed the presence of human DNA.
Great. And the purpose of bringing it in front of this committee is just a full disclosure, because presumably the commission is going to be looking at this also. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. So from us then, any comments that the committee would like to make? It's just basically an ongoing investigation, and the lab has found an issue, and they're dealing with it, as far as I can see.
So I just
in
had a
appropriate
question.
manner.
You said that your technicians rotate through extraction, quant, and then serology?
Yes.
Did she rotate through those two other things, or was she only doing
Yes, no,
serology?
she was not on, she did, yes, she did.
And
Mhm.
did you look at any of the other things that she did to see if there are any issues there?
At this point in time, we're concentrating on
Just on-
the known issue that we have, which is the omission of correct results. That might be expanded should we deem that it's necessary. However, when it comes to extraction or quantitation, we do have controls in there that determine whether or not she does things correctly. So we feel at this time that there's no need to go there at this point, but we'll see. Absolutely.
Who does, like, bed sheets and those sorts of things? would she be doing something like that, or does your
No,
lab not
that
get
would be a
those?
task for a criminalist level 2,
Oh, okay.
our DNA interpreting analysts.
Okay.
Ken?
What sort of plans do you have in terms of reporting out where it was negative before, it's now positive?
We will issue an amended report to the District Attorney's Office and the NYPD. We have already disclosed the list of cases to NYPD and to the District Attorney's offices that are subject to re-examination now. A case where the result stays concordant, that will be documented in the case file. And we're making phone calls on these?
Well, we're writing a report, we're not issuing.
Yeah. So if there is a discordant result, we will issue an amended report and send it out. The district attorney's offices are also preparing a letter to notify the defense attorney in the specific cases that are subject to re-examination.
We have a question from Chief Pulaski.
Just stating that we've been working very closely with MECI, complete and full disclosure. So we're working through all of this stuff. On our part, we're not pleased, but we're pleased with the partnership that we have in that it's never been a mystery, never been a delay. We know exactly what's going on. It's worked out very well.
Have any of the cases, have any of them gone to trial? Have any of them been post-conviction type cases? I suppose that's what you're looking into.
I don't have that information
Yes.
at this
Okay.
point.
All right. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. Yeah, sir. The next item on the agenda is under item 6, new business, and this concerns a letter dated August the 24th from Sean Byrne, the chair of the Commission on Forensic Science, requesting recommendations regarding reporting of DNA. And so I received a letter from Sean Byrne asking the committee to review reporting guidelines. So I think we have a copy of the letter. You should have a copy of the letter. The issue stemmed from a discussion on the NYC OCME Department of Forensic Biology inspection report regarding how they reported STR, what they did in an STR analysis. The lab was saying that they used a particular kit and with a particular manufacturer and a particular kit which has certain specifications, and that's what they did. The argument against this is that made initially but has been successfully resolved was that you're not actually listing the loci. You should be listing the loci itself. You know, the D numbers, D3, D2, etc. You should be listing that in the report and not the kit. If you're just listing the kit, you're not in full compliance because you're not listing the loci. So from what I can see in terms of, am I speaking wrongly? I'm trying to summarize what... Pat, do you want to give us an expose of what happened then?
Pat Lutowitz, I'm Deputy Director at OCME,
Yes.
Forensic Biology. Actually, I believe the DNA quality assurance standards had, in the last revision, been modified to allow the use of listing either the kit or the individual loci. So we had changed our process to, in an attempt to simplify the reports a little bit for the readers, to just list the kit. The problem with the finding was that in our procedure, we said that we would list the loci, so the finding was for the lack of concordance between what the exact language in our procedure was versus what we were actually doing in our reports. So the corrective action on that was simply to change our procedure and say that we would either list the kit or the loci. So
right, that's what you did, and that's been successfully resolved. But the Commission, despite that, and they know that, have still said, despite all of this, that they know all this, they still want us to that's my understanding, that they still want us to review this in some way to see whether or not we agree or whatever, I assume.
Sure, I
with
understand.
that.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I
Yes.
thought you had said that that listing, just the kit, wasn't in conformance with requirements.
No, that's the other side. That's one side.
Okay.
There's a suggestion that this is probably not in the spirit of the original DNA. I can't look into their minds, but my understanding is one is to look into whether or not it's appropriate, despite ASCLAD saying it's fine, ASCLAD Lab, but whether or not we as a scientific body would agree or disagree with that. But can someone, maybe Gina could tell us, is that the spirit
is
of
correct.
that is
That's
the spirit of what they
exactly
want
what
us
it
to
is. Yes.
look at?
Mhm.
Okay. So, and what they did was they provided us with the document, one of the corrective action document that OCME had to complete, and where they discussed this action. So, so it's open for discussion. Basically, the accrediting body is happy with, and is part of the allowed standards in the country, to use the kit designation as well as the listing of the loci. But the Commission wants us to also review this to see whether or not we are in agreement or otherwise. I think the specific question was request that the DNA subcommittee review reporting guidelines for DNA reports. But this is only a very small part of a DNA report. That's probably a broader issue. But in terms of this,
To me, it seems to make sense to use a kit to make it more streamlined for the end user. Any subsequent review on that by an expert could be easily found by, the experts are going to know what the kits have in them, so, I mean, if this is going for the end user, why have all the loci? I sort of agree.
Well, so I think that if somebody else was going to attempt to reproduce the results of the laboratory, they need to know the kit, because the primer sequences are different between kits, and you risk the possibility of getting a different profile if you're just going by loci and willy-nilly grabbing a kit to try to redo those loci, to retype them. So the kit is more specific and accurate, essentially.
Well, can I interrupt for a second? I guess the question is it sufficient just to list the kit, or do you need, in addition, the loci? So I guess some of the comments seem a little bit addressing, you wouldn't just include the loci and not the kit, but if you have the kit, do you also need the loci?
I mean, what if you have a negative, you make an attempt to do an amplification with a particular kit, you don't get any results, so you're not going to put a chart or anything like that in the report that shows the loci and the type. So you would say the kit only. And I think it's just more accurate to say the kit, as far as the bottom line is somebody else may want the evidence retyped. And so you would want to use the same kit, I would think.
One would list loci that failed, even if the kit was used, presumably.
Right. But if you got totally negative results, you might not list any loci, but you would still indicate the kit that you used, that you made the attempt to amplify with.
Well, does the lab do when you have a say you have a partial and you use identifier or whatever you use? Do you then say that there's a partial profile and X loci were found or X loci were not found? No, you don't.
No, we don't give
No.
that level of specificity. The information at that detail is, of course, always available, but for, I guess, for clarity to the end users, we don't necessarily go into that level of detail.
We do not list, we do not have allele tables. We only give the conclusions.
Would you say a partial profile? Sorry.
The results of the comparison and the conclusions, not the results of the value.
But if you said it was a partial profile, would you say there's a partial profile with X number of loci, just a number, like 10 loci, or would you give some indication quantitatively?
Only if we do a statistical analysis, then we say the statistical analysis is based on X number of loci.
So can you answer to your question, in a partial, they're not listing which loci were or which loci were not?
But the extra information is available in the discovery.
Yes.
But it's in the notes.
It's in the notes. So.
Which is
It is.
which is routinely provided to attorneys in in cases where it's, in fact, that's quite the large proportion of our administrative staff is making copies and providing.
So just thinking of worst-case scenario, only 4 loci come up and they match. That is statistically not very meaningful. What sort of report do you give?
We would, in the report, we would say the person is included as a contributor, and now if it's a single source, we would say is included, could be, is consistent with being the source, and we would give the statistics, and we would list how many loci were included in the statistics.
Okay, so in those cases, you would do the statistics.
We do the statistics, of course, for positive associations, we do statistics.
Right.
So if you had a partial match, so-called partial match, and there's 4 loci, if you want to call it partial match.
Don't call it
I know, I
partial
don't like
match.
calling it that. Only 4 loci came up.
A
Right?
match to a partial
Yes.
profile.
And then you'd say that it was 4,
Yes.
and here's the
Yes.
statistic. Yeah. That was,
Okay.
I think that was the main question. Any other comments? Chief Pulaski?
As an end user, so that has nothing to do with the science, but as an end user, we're looking to get the clearest, most succinct laboratory report that we can get. Then if we have questions, we can always go beyond that. But NECI has done a great job. Our folks have gone out and actually trained all of our detectives to the tune of, I have 3,900 people working for me. And the training on the current report is still somewhat vexing because the report does have to have quite a bit of material in it. So again, not speaking as a scientific body, but as an end user, we're looking to keep this succinct and clear, and the more extraneous information that gets in there, the more difficult it is for my detectives, I can't speak for the district attorneys, to interpret what the results are, to get to the right spot, to see this is what I need to know. So if I could just kind of share that with you.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think, speaking on from Alison's point, these kits have higher specificity because if you take this locus and use this particular kit versus that kit, because they use different primers, there can be occasions where you get slightly different results.
Yeah.
So there's more specificity when you actually define the kit than if you just define the loci in some ways. So I don't know whether this committee wants to go as far as to say that it's better, but from what I'm hearing so far, the committee is in broad agreement that using the kit in lieu of listing loci is a perfectly acceptable way of reporting your results. Is that?
Yes.
I think we've gone farther, and it's not just acceptable, I think it's desirable, which is the consensus that I heard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we want to even go further then, which is to say that it's preferable, in fact, to desirable to include the name of the kit. But that doesn't preclude a lab using both, of course, if they want to give the kit and the loci. But in terms of the question that was asked of us today, true to say then that the committee reviewed the request and in fact deems that the use of a kit designation is actually preferable to listing the loci when reporting results in a DNA report.
Insufficient?
Is
Is
necessary.
preferable and sufficient.
Preferable and
And sufficient.
sufficient?
What about that?
Yeah. Yes.
Judy, we taking note of that?
Are you going to vote on that?
Yeah, if you want to, I think we should. I think we should vote on this. Do you think we should vote on this? I think we should because it's a request by the commission.
I motion for the acceptance of our recommendation.
That we deem it preferable and sufficient and preferable to enumerate the kit used in a DNA report.
Right.
So, anyone proposal?
Propose.
Any second? Any discussion? All those in favour of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
May the record reflect that I abstain, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hirsch. Okay. So that was easy, as we say. We have one of these buttons. That was easy. Quite easy. So prior to ending the meeting, I have to make an announcement that we have another resignation from the DNA subcommittee. So we've had 2 new members join us today, but in fact, one of our current members is resigning from the committee after many, many years of service. And I'm talking about Dr. Chakraborty. Dr. Chakraborty has been a long-serving member of this committee. In fact, he's served from the beginning of this subcommittee in 1995. So he's given us 16 years of service. In fact, Dr. Hirsch, myself, and Ranajit are the 3 remaining members from that original time. And so, of course, we all know Dr. Chakraborty is the director of this Center for Computational Genomics at the Institute of Investigative Genetics, a professor in the Department of Forensic Investigative Genetics at the University of North Texas Health Science Center in Fort Worth, Texas. So I think the people of New York have been well served by your selfless dedication to DNA typing, DNA analysis in the state of New York. And as a token of the appreciation for the people of New York, I should like to present to you $1 million. No, in recognition of your service, your dedicated service and your many contributions to the New York State DNA Subcommittee, member 1995 to 2011, and best wishes.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for your service. You're allowed to say something because you want to, I think.
Just a short comment. Well, I was telling some of my colleagues that I wear a different hat in the Indian community. So I have done a little bit of reading of our Indian ethics. Indian God, his unit of time is 14 years, 1 yuga. I have done more than that. My resignation has nothing to do with the committee members or the state DNA work. I have taken another major job. From October, I will be also the commission member of the International Commission of Radiological Protection. There, we literally have quarterly meetings, hundreds of pages to be reviewed. I think it will be better if someone takes my place. And I assure you, you have good replacement for me. And by my resignation, I do not mean to say that I am not available to you. There are new issues coming up. For example, the combination of mito, Y, and autosomal evidence. Very few people can testify on those. LCN, another issue. We will have true allele coming up very soon. So should you need any help in projects or in presenting your evidence in course, feel free to contact me. And here are my business cards, your colleagues. And by the way,
Thank you so much.
from 1989, my income from DNA forensics has up to now graduated 16 PhD students. So I don't buy the Rolex watch. I send students to meetings, give them stipend, and in these days when NIH money is reducing, I think this is a way to increase the talented people in our field. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
I have a DB pin that we would be very honored here to pin on Dr. Chakraborty. So
Very nice.
I hope there's no context bias involved in this. Are you allowed to? If you could just put your jacket on for a second. So on behalf of everybody in New York City, but particularly on the part of the NYPD, we really, really thank you for all of your service
Thank you.
in keeping our citizens safe. So wear this if you're speeding in Texas. I'll give you my card, you whip this out, and that's what you call. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ranjit. I should also like to announce that we have a replacement for Dr. Chakraborty, just to let everyone know that we have Dr. Chakraborty was the representative for population genetics as recommended by the Commissioner of DCGS. And so as a replacement for Dr. Chakraborty, we have Dr. Fred Bieber. That many of the people in the room will know. Fred Bieber is an accomplished medical geneticist at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, member of the Faculty of Medicine, Harvard University, and consultant at the Massachusetts General Hospital and Children's Hospital, Boston. And so Fred Bieber's tenure will start as of today, and hopefully he will be able to attend the next meeting. And so the last item on the agenda is, when is the next meeting? We do have a date for the next meeting, and we don't expect Ranjit to be at that one, but it's the 2nd of December here in New York City. Okay, so with that, I should like to thank members of the committee, and especially Ranjit Chakraborty, your last meeting, and members of the public for attending this meeting, and the meeting is now closed.
I would just like to make one suggestion. Similar to Dr. Carmody with Ranjit, no one will replace either of them. They both will be succeeded by someone, but no one will replace them.
Thank you.
Total agreement, yes. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.